360, former president unloads on the verdict that made him a convicted felon, and Republicans join him in attacking the criminal justice system. What's ahead in his case, and new polling on the political impact. Also tonight, someone who knows what it's like to get inside his head, Art of the Deal ghostwriter Tony Schwartz, and how his former subject may handle the days ahead. And breaking news, the details of President Biden's new ceasefire proposal for Gaza, the timing of it, and the reception it's getting. Good evening, thanks for joining us. We begin tonight with what comes next legally, politically, and otherwise now that Donald Trump is a convicted felon. Both he and President Biden weighed in today. The president very briefly, the former president at great length, more than a half hour this morning at Trump Tower.
This is a scam. This is a rigged trial. It shouldn't have been in that venue. We shouldn't have had that judge. You saw what happened to some of the witnesses that were on our side. They were literally crucified by this man who looks like an angel, but he's really a devil. Hush money, hush money. It's not hush money. It's called the non-disclosure agreement. And it all comes out of the White House. Crooked Joe Biden, the worst president in the history of our country. He's the worst president in the history of our country.
His former lawyer and fixer, prosecution witness Michael Cohen, called his old boss's performance today a, quote, crazy avalanche of broken brain word manure. From a factual standpoint, that often stated claim that President Biden was somehow behind the trial is simply false, something the president underscored today.
It's a state case, not a federal case. It was heard by a jury of 12 citizens, 12 Americans, 12 people like you. After careful deliberation, the jury reached a unanimous verdict. They found Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts. Now he'll be given the opportunity, as he should, to appeal that decision just like everyone else has that opportunity. That's how the American system of justice works. And it's reckless, it's dangerous, it's irresponsible for anyone to say this was rigged just because they don't like the verdict.
Congressional Republicans, meantime, many of whom identify and campaign on being tough on crime and supporters of law enforcement, were almost unified in their condemnation not just of the verdict, but also the justice system.
Under Joe Biden, the weaponization of the justice system has become front and center in this election.
You cannot say that this trial was anything more than politics masquerading as justice. I do not think it was a fair trial at all.
You have a district attorney that literally ran on convicting Donald Trump. That's a problem.
House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan's subcommittee on so-called weaponization of the federal government today announced it wants Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and one of the trial prosecutors to appear for a hearing next month. Several Republican senators today signed a letter saying they, quote, are unwilling to aid and abet this White House and will not allow expedited consideration and passage of Democratic legislation. And Mike Johnson, Speaker of the House, second in line of succession to the presidency, went on Fox this morning. He said something striking given his role and what the Constitution says about separation of powers between the three branches of government.
I do believe the Supreme Court should step in. I think that the justices on the court, I know many of them personally, I think they're deeply concerned about that as we are. So I think they'll set this straight.
Well, keep it honest, there's no indication the Supreme Court is going to get involved in Trump's felony convictions, and there's certainly no precedent for their involvement either. Joining us now is New York criminal defense attorney Arthur Aidala. With us as well tonight, retired New York Judge George Grasso. Also, former Manhattan Chief Assistant District Attorney Karen Friedman-Agnifilo, who recently interviewed Michael Cohen for her podcast. And full disclosure, her law firm represents him, but she does not work on that case, and there are no restrictions on what she can say about the Trump case. Judge, I heard something you had said, and I wanted to ask you about. You were in the court every single day. You were there for the guilty verdict, guilty verdicts as well. You don't rule out jail time for Donald Trump.
I absolutely don't. So, on the one hand, we look at this and we can say it's an E felony, the lowest level of felony. It's nonviolent. We have a 77-year-old convicted felon here without a prior record. So that would all obviously weigh towards no incarceration. On the other hand, the judge is waiting now for about 6 weeks. He's going to get a pre-sentencing report. They're working on it now. They're going to be looking, has he learned anything? Is he contrite? Well, we just saw what we saw together there. So kind of like X that. And to me, most serious is, this is not the typical falsification of business records case. So you'd think of them as like the average person might think it was like a green eye shade kind of thing, like an accountant putting a book in the wrong drawer or something like that. This is the connection crime here. The object crime was a violation of New York election law. 34 separate felony counts where the jury found unanimously that New York State election law was violated. Who likes to rant and rave constantly about election interference? Well, the guy who was just convicted of 34 counts, essentially, of election interference in an election in 2016 that was actually close enough that the actions he stands convicted of could have turned that election around. That's about as serious as it gets. And if I were the judge, I'm not saying I would impose jail, but I would strongly consider it. The max is 4 years. It doesn't have to be jail time. So he's got a lot of range there. You could do like 60 days jail and 3 years probation to send a message about how serious it would be. Weekends in jail.
Community service, pick up trash on the subway.
Karen, I mean, do you think it's a possibility?
I think it's a possibility. Look, I think just adding to everything that the judge just said is also the fact that he was held in contempt 10 different times in front of this judge. I mean, did you ever...
That in a normal case would actually be taken into consideration.
Well, let's all state for the fact here, Trump was treated differently in this case. He was treated far more leniently than any other defendant who would have been put in jail, like contempt number 2 or 3.
Judge, I can't wait to talk. I just can't wait to talk because I couldn't disagree with you more.
Why?
If you look at the median sentence on an felony, non-violent, 77-year-old person with no record whatsoever in a crime, Anderson, where they're not talking about stealing millions of dollars or any kind of massive corruption that's taken little old ladies they were not proven. It wasn't proven that he stole the election.
It was. They had to find it unanimously. If you read the jury charge, they had to find unanimously, beyond a reasonable doubt, that there was election interference.
That
Period.
was, okay,
Full stop.
There was an intent to.
Okay, there was an intent to. I want to know how many people in the United States of America who voted for Donald Trump would not have voted for him had they found out that when he was extorted by Stormy Daniels, he entered into a non-disclosure agreement and paid her off. Anderson, the judge already said during...
Well, we will never know that, but they were certainly concerned enough to have gone ahead and commit what the jury found.
Okay, but the judge said, I don't want to put you in jail, Mr. Trump. You are the presumptive nominee of the Republican Party and a past president. I don't want to put you in jail. And if Alvin Bragg dares to ask for jail time after on the first day of him being in office, he put out a memo about how soft he was in crime to the degree that it drove this judge to lead the bench, a prestigious position he had, to run for district attorney in Queens because he thought crime was going crazy. Alvin Bragg said, I want you to find alternatives to incarcerations on robbery, on this, on that. And now on this old man, he's...
So Judge Grasso, what do you say to that?
Wait a minute, I got tears in my eyes. I gotta collect myself.
Alvin Bragg doesn't ask for jail on violent crimes. He's gonna ask for jail on this?
I think stealing an election. Let me finish. 34 felony counts involving a crime constituting a conspiracy to use unlawful means to impact on election. 34 felonies. And let's not forget, the 2016 election, I believe it was 40,000 votes. In Michigan, Wisconsin,
80,000 votes
and
in
Pennsylvania, and 3 swing states. And we know through the testimony of
20,000 votes, I think, in Wisconsin.
And we know the testimony of Hope Hicks, who felt so bad about her testimony, she spontaneously broke down crying. She was the inside-out path for the jury to know exactly the panic mode that the Trump campaign was in when the Access Hollywood story broke, and she got the email in Trump Tower, October 7th of 2016, and Trump was practicing for the debate. They were in free fall. They were in panic. The RNC was talking about replacing Trump.
Judge,
And
you
that's
ran
when
We're not going to settle this. We get your positions. What would you think that Blanche will go for on an appeal? I mean, what will they try to focus on?
So I think that a couple of things. I think they will they will take an approach where they will try to appeal everything that they talk about all the time, that the judge is conflicted and should have recused.
What do you think is the best avenue for them?
I think there really is only one appellate issue that I think has substance, and that is one that has potential merit, is the jury charge regarding the thing we're talking about with the election and and what was the object crime that made this a felony. It's complicated, and the number one area of reversal in New York is in jury charge, because that can be very tricky, and you have to get it exactly right. And
this is as Arthur has repeatedly stated, that this is creating something out of kind of a new cloth.
Well, slightly. So I do think that is one area that has some merit and some validity. I don't think it's going to be reversed, but I think it's a genuinely legitimate substantive issue that will be taken very seriously by the
Judge,
courts.
you agree with that?
I absolutely agree.
That would be
I'm going to add to that. I also think
I knew you would.
that's my job. I also think whoever Trump's attorneys are at the appellate level, you have to look at the inception of this, Anderson, because that's the grand slam. What Karen said would give Trump a new trial. But if he wanted to get a grand slam and have it dismissed, he would have to go back and say the way this case was charged so uniquely, taking misdemeanors out of the statute of limitations and bringing them back in as felonies in the statute of limitations, is something that the appellate court has to look at and say, is this how we want to treat every citizen in the state of New York?
Arthur Idala, thank you. Judge Grasso, Karen Friedman, as well. The